Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the And Also podcast. I'm your host, Madison, and this is a podcast where we talk about grief, loss, trauma, mental health, all sorts of really intense topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And I started this podcast after I lost my ex-partner of 6 years, one of my best friends, to suicide in 2022. So in today's episode, I honestly wanted to do another solo episode. I have a bunch of episodes pre-recorded and just trying to figure out the order of things. And after my last full-length episode, which was the one that I talked about turning 25, the response was unreal. It was amazing. And I got the most support I've gotten on an episode in a very, very long time. A lot of you had mentioned that you wanted me to do more solo episodes. I got so many DMs after that one just saying, we want to hear more from your perspective. So I am going to be doing a lot more solo episodes in this season, which I'm very excited about. And this one felt particularly important because it is the holiday season. You know, it's going to be almost mid-December when this goes up. And what better time than now to talk about grief, loss, and dealing with the holidays, especially if it's the first holiday after your loss. Yeah, it feels nearly impossible to deal with when you're living through it. So I wanted to talk about that with you guys because it's something, very close to my heart and something I have been through. Let's get into it. But before we start the episode, of course, we need to do our drink of the day. So this was as per a guest recommendation. I am so excited to try it. This is the Polar Sparkling Seltzer Aid, the mango limeade flavor. She said she's obsessed with it and it's like her favorite thing. Let's get into it. Dang, that smells so good. You guys, the flavor is amazing. It is so carbonated that it like fizzed inside my mouth. Like I don't know if I can handle that. Because y'all know I have RCPD. I literally can't burp. So drinking super carbonated stuff where you can hear it crackling in the can, not always the best option for me. This is really good. And I'm not huge on seltzer. I could see like mixing this in with like a mango juice and then adding this to be like a little bit carbonated. I would use this as something to like mix into my other drinks. So 10 out of 10. And I also know if I even give this to Jake, he will drink it in 4 or 5 seconds. Like it'll be gone. He's obsessed with seltzer, so I need him to try this. All right, you guys, so let's get into today's episode where we're talking about grief and the holiday season. The holidays can be a beautiful, amazing, special time of year with friends, with family, even just getting some rest from work and from the general like hustle and bustle of capitalist America, you know what I mean? But they can also be incredibly unbearable, hard, frustrating, difficult when you're grieving. And especially if the grief is fresh or if it's your first holiday without the person, you might be going into this having no idea how to face it, no idea how to deal with it. You might be feeling really alone. You may not be sure how to ask for help or how to get support or if you deserve support. I know for me, it was like, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to ruin everybody else's holiday by being the sad person in the room. But let me tell you one thing. If you're around the right people in your life, they're going to be there, period. Okay. But we'll get more into that later. I just want to talk about how us grieving people, myself included, deal with loss during this season of life. And how I find ways to honor Regis, how we all find ways to honor our loved ones during this period, because it is hard. I struggle a lot to even remember my first holiday season after Regis passed because he died at the beginning of November. And then, you have Thanksgiving, my birthday, Christmas, New Year's, like the whole thing. It just happened so quick. And I was still in that fog of like even understanding that he wasn't here anymore. So it was very hard. But one thing I do remember is on Christmas, my mom got me this bag of coffee that was Bananas Foster flavored. And that was one of Regis's favorite flavors. And when I opened it, I literally started like scream crying. You know what I mean? So it's like the little things that trigger you and bring you right back to, oh my God, I'm in this grief. This is real. This is not just a dream. And I can't just pretend like it's not happening all the time. So first things first, why is grief hard around the holidays? Why are the holidays hard for grieving people? Ultimately, like, it just magnifies the absence of that person. It really puts it in your face. Like, you are celebrating, you are happy. This is supposed to be light and joyful. And then here you are, sitting with the heaviest thing you could possibly sit with, expected to just enjoy the holiday, expected to brush your feelings off for the sake of other people or for the sake of the magic of the holiday season, the new beginnings that it's supposed to bring. For a lot of people, it could be the empty chair in the living room, you know, that your dad used to sit in when you would open your presents around the holidays. Or it could be, you know, that Thanksgiving chair, the plate that was never filled up with food. It's there. It's very present. It could be, you know, if you're dealing with spousal loss and you have kids, it could be the fact that, you know, their parent is not here on the holidays and you're trying to navigate your own grief while carrying that grief for your children. There's so many different scenarios. You know, holiday traditions are no longer the same. They have to be changed because, you know, you're missing one of the crucial pieces to that. The pressure to be festive and have fun and be joyful is immense. At the same time, everything feels less whole. It all feels incomplete. And it's really, really hard to be in that situation where you're like, oh, this is a tradition, you know, Regis and I used to do. We have this thing in our town here called First Night, where it's like New Year's Eve. They shut down the streets. Everybody's out and about. There's food, there's vendors, and it's really exciting. And that was Regis and I's first date, you know, probably 9 years ago now. And every year since then, you know, we've always gone to First Night together. And then all of a sudden, First Night, every year when First Night comes around, it feels so angering and frustrating and just like, wow, I just have to not do this with him anymore. It's very uncomfortable. I think common triggers for a lot of people are the social expectations, the expectation to be on, to be present, to be buying gifts, writing cards, coming to the parties, coming to the functions, bringing food. It can make you almost try to push your grief to the side, and that feels impossible. It feels so hard to shut off the grieving brain when it's all you can really think of. But then again, you feel like there's no space to feel it or to express it at the function. So that brings me to, how do we honor our grief? How do we leave space for it? Maybe when other people don't want to, or when it feels like an invasion of other people's holiday celebration, because that's something I dealt with a lot. I always felt like I can't bring it up here. If I bring it up, it's going to kill the vibe. It's going to make everyone upset. It's going to trigger people. So how do we do it? How do we balance it all? I personally find that starting a small tradition in their honor is really important, whether it's lighting a candle at the table and leaving it where they would sit, or, you know, just leaving it wherever in your house. It doesn't have to be so present. This could just be something you do for yourself. It could be something you do with your family, with your friends, but light a candle for them and maybe make their favorite dish, right? Like Regis loves shepherd's pie so much. So maybe on the holidays, you know, you make a shepherd's pie to honor that person, to still have them present at the function. Add their favorite song to the holiday playlist. Keep their picture out and visible. I know a lot of people take pictures down when someone passes because they don't want it to be the trigger, which I personally disagree with, but it's something that people do. I have Regis everywhere in my apartment. He's never being put away for the season. And I think that's something really important in general, but especially at the holidays, having a picture of that person out and present. It's a way for people to realize you're comfortable with talking about it, but also it's just a way to have that person present. You can look to them. You can feel in a sense that they are there. It's kind of like what Brittany and I talk about with funerals. It's just bringing that person's essence forward into the room. This next idea to honor your loved one is to write them a letter. And I do this still to this day. I write to Regis. I have my Regis journal. Like, I have a journal that is dedicated to him. And I just write all my thoughts, whether it's holidays, whether it's just, hey, I'm thinking of you. It's my way of, like, quote unquote, communicating with him. And this is something I tell to a lot of people who reach out to me who are dealing with a fresh death. They're like, hey, so-and-so passed. I've been listening to your podcast. I'm struggling. What do I do? And this is something I tell a lot of people is to start a journal, write to them, get those feelings out. It is a vessel for you to not have it attacking your brain 24/7. So do this on the holidays. Write them a Christmas card. Don't leave them out of the things you normally would have included them in. Also, this won't be for every family, and everyone's different. Every friend group is different, but if you can take a moment to go around the table and share a memory of that person, I think too, something we have to kind of clear the air on is don't be afraid to talk about them. Don't be afraid, okay? Because that is when that person's name stops being spoken at the table, and acknowledge it. I'm sure if it's a family member or a friend that, many people at the function loved, they're all probably thinking the same thing. They're all probably hoping somebody else brings it up. So don't be afraid to be the person that brings it up. It's so important, and it really helps other people to feel like they can explore those feelings and they can feel comfortable sharing. I know being the first is usually hard, but it is really, really important. If you're not around a group of people who give you that space, it's also okay to take that time alone to reflect and to honor them in your own little ways, whether it's wearing their shirt or, when you're in the car about to get out to go into the Thanksgiving dinner or the Christmas Eve party, taking 5 minutes to talk to them. Yeah, it sounds crazy, whatever. I don't really care. If that's what gets you through, girl, talk all you want, okay? It's okay to do things that might seem quote unquote weird around this time. And in any time, really. Like, do what you gotta do to get through. Don't overextend yourself. Don't put yourself in situations where you're gonna be hurting. If you're having a bad day and it happens to be on the holiday, it's Thanksgiving, you wake up, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to go to my mom's house for Thanksgiving dinner. They're expecting me to bring the pie, whatever. But then the grief is eating away at you and you can't do it. Don't do it. And people that love you will understand. And that brings me to the social expectations and setting boundaries with your loved ones. It's okay to say no, to take breaks, to leave early, to show up late, especially around the holidays. Take your time. Put yourself first, okay? Especially if this is your first holiday without that person. You might think going into the event it's going to be fine. And then you show up and you're like, holy shit, this hit me so hard. It's okay to say, I gotta go. I can't do this anymore. If people are asking you how you're doing, that's amazing. And, be honest with them. Don't feel like you have to say, oh, doing great. Yeah, I'm doing fine. This is so great. I love the holidays. Girl, no. Don't lie. Be honest with your feelings, because when you're honest with your feelings with other people, it's easier to be honest with yourself as well. And I think that's really important because a lot of times we try to put that mask on, put that happy face on when it comes to grief in the holiday season. And at the end of the day, it makes other people think we're doing great. It makes them want to ask about it less. It puts us in a place where we struggle more and more to be honest with our feelings. So if you're struggling during the holiday season with your grief and the loss of whoever it is that you lost, feel it. Be honest about it. Don't be afraid to say, I can't make it to dinner because I am struggling bad. When people ask, how are you? Don't be afraid to say, I'm not doing well. I'm struggling. I lost my father this year. I lost my spouse this year. I lost my sibling this year, and I'm not doing okay. And the holidays don't feel like the holidays anymore. That's okay to say. That's okay to own. That's okay to feel. Don't hold yourself to a standard that is unrealistic. Don't pretend like everything's okay when it's not. With that being said, if you're able to bring someone in your support system to the function, do it. Do it. And I'm sure a lot of people's families won't care, but some people, they might not want you to bring someone extra. If you can't bring someone extra, have someone on lockdown on the phone, okay? Say, if I call you between 6 and 10 p.m., answer. That means I'm struggling. That means I'm in the bathroom crying. That means I'm at the function and I need support. So if you can't have someone physically there, have someone digitally there and have that lifeline that you can reach out to and say, yeah, I can't do this. pick me up or talk me down. I want to stay. I want to stick it out, but this is hard. Talk me down. Have that in place ahead of time. And like I said, it's okay to leave early. In 5 years, no one is going to remember. And if they do, that's not a you problem, girl. Leave the function early if you can't do it anymore. Your mental health is more important. You getting through the day is more important than how Karen feels about you skipping dessert, okay? And that leads me to finding joy, finding moments to feel okay, and acknowledging that there might be some people listening to this, and you might be one of them, that, it's your first holiday season experiencing grief and the holidays come around and you're completely okay. That's okay too. It's okay if the holidays aren't hard for you. Some people, it helps their grief. Some people, it helps them see that there are people around them that love them and care for them. Not everyone has horrible holidays with grief. Some people do, some people don't. Some people, it's a mix, but that is just an opportunity to remind yourself, and for me to remind you right now, that grief and joy can coexist. Grief and happiness can coexist. Frustration, anger, hate for the world can coexist with love, joy, and peaceful moments. That's why the show is called And Also. It's like grief, the grief is there, the grief is heavy, and also I'm allowed to give myself moments of joy and happiness. I'm allowed to lean into these good feelings while I have them, while still holding space for the grief, for the sadness, for the anger, etc. So you can miss someone deeply, you can grieve someone deeply, you can be the most heartbroken you've ever been over a loss, a death. And also, you can still find happiness, find moments of peace, find joy, find that, that chair at the Thanksgiving table is empty now. And also, I have all of these wonderful, beautiful memories to share. I'm with people who love and support me. I have space to feel the grief. I have space to feel the love. And I'm going to take this moment and say, you know what? Here's to the good things, and acknowledging, that seat is empty and that sucks really bad. That is the worst feeling, but it's okay to hold space for both. And that is so hard for so many people, myself included. It is like, I'm saying this and I'm like, girl, you got to start believing this because it's hard. It's really hard. I'm a black and white thinker. Look around me. It's all black and white. For those that are watching on YouTube, my entire set is black and white. I am a black and white thinker at heart. I am a negative person at heart. I'm always going to see the bad before I see the good, but it's about balance. It's about holding space for both. Find the small joys. Eating your favorite cookie. That is a win. You got to eat your favorite cookie. Are you serious? Come on now. You got to, see your nieces and nephews, or you got to see your kid smile. They're small joys, but they're huge when you're in that dark place, when you're in that place of like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know how to do this. I feel like I'm going to die. These things are so important to hold space for and to acknowledge and to sit with and to enjoy. So that's my advice. I really hope that this helped you, or at the very least, all I want this to do is to let you know that you are seen in this. You are not alone in this. If you're feeling fine during the holidays, amazing. Lean into it. Enjoy every second you feel okay. If you're feeling awful and you feel like, how am I going to do this? And you've been dreading this literally all year, you're not alone. It sucks. It really does. And that's why, I'm trying to create this space for all of us to feel seen in what we're going through. So thank you for being here, for listening to what I have to say. I know in grief, it's hard to consume grief content because it can feel like I don't know. For me, it kind of felt like I can't listen to that because no one knows my experience. No one has felt this pain before. But truly, I promise you, even if we don't know your full experience and your story is different or is whatever the case is, I promise you, grief overlaps. Grief is grief. Most of us have felt grief. If not, we will feel grief. And if you're navigating this too, like so many of us are, I love to hear how you're coping with it and how you're honoring your loved one this holiday season and every day. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, girl. If you're listening on audio platforms, head over to Instagram and also Pod and message me. Let me know how you're coping with grief, because I would love to share these with my audience so that, your tips and your survival tips and tricks can help other people in their grief journey. All right, you guys. So that was the grief and holiday season episode. I hope that this was helpful in any way for you. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, guys, so before we close out today's episode, I want to give you my mental health update with SHEA of Rooted Within. So if you don't know, a few episodes back, I interviewed SHEA from Rooted Within, and I'm doing her inner alignment program for childhood trauma and grief healing. So this is week 5 of 8, and I can't even believe I'm saying that. So this session was hard for me because it was the first session after the election. And this week threw me off so much. So the presidential election fell on Regis's death day, November 6th. He died November 6th, 2022. King Donald Trump was elected on November 6th. And look, this is not a political podcast, and I don't want to get so much into this, but just know this election has completely horrified me, completely disappointed me, completely, like, my circle is filled with everyone that Donald Trump hates. And that is so scary and sickening, and it just threw my mental health for a loop, as I'm sure it did so many of you. And just know that no matter what, this space here is a safe one for you. No matter who you are, no matter how you identify, we need community now more than ever. So I wanted to reiterate that to you guys because in my session with SHEA, that was a really huge theme for me. You know, dealing with the fear, the what ifs, the spiraling, the disappointment, the frustration. It's a lot to think about, and I know a lot of us are in the same boat. And I'm not here to debate that. But when I'm saying for me and for my circle and for my friends and family, like, this is a really scary situation. And you know, when you are queer, when you are a person of color, when you are not cisgendered, this is much different. So keep that in mind as you continue to argue with people on Facebook. Not everyone's lived experience is yours. So yeah, this session was really overwhelming emotionally. I was in a really bad place. You know, I had a few days to process the election before my session, but it certainly was scary. And it still is, but I have found ways to kind of feel through this and cope with it. And it's unfortunate that this has been added onto so many people's plates of things to be scared of and worried about because it's a lot. Knowing that, you know, in an already unaffordable world that's only going to get worse, knowing that our rights are at risk, that I want to talk more about practices that I'm keeping in mind as I'm navigating such an uncertain time as many of us are. And I think the really big thing that SHEA is helping me remember is to not tip the canoe. It's really important to, one, disconnect from a lot of the stimulation if you're feeling overwhelmed with the election results or even with anything going on in your life. Sometimes, you know, being on our phones, having a million things on our plates, it's too much, and we need to just disconnect, take a walk, move our body, and just relax to get ourselves in a neutral mind space to then maybe address these things deeper. We also need to remember that right now, our friends, our support systems that we have are the most important thing, and we can't lose sight of that. I know right now for me personally, I'm learning to lean into the love that I have and the support that I have, because right now it feels like that's all we have. So lean on your support system and try to avoid that feeling of this is all doom and gloom, right? Like, I know it's so easy to go there. And as someone who naturally thinks in a very negative place, it's nearly impossible for me to not see it that way. Just try to keep the canoe balanced. You don't want too much negative. You don't want too much positive. Just try to stay somewhere in the middle. See things realistically, but balance that out with, okay, and also I have friends, I have family, I have a plan in place. And of course, this is so different for me because I'm in a blue state. I'm in New York State. I'm probably the safest here in the country. But I think a lot of us feel so much empathy for those that are going to have a very different 4 years. I just want you to know that, you know, even through the setbacks I had, I really struggled mentally. I felt very angry. I felt like I could not control my emotions. But even with those setbacks, it's not the end of your healing journey. It's so possible, and it will happen. You will get back on track. You will get back on track. As long as you put in the work, remember the tools you have in place, and actively implement those things, you will get back on track. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible. And I did it, and it was a bad week, but I know that this is not the end of my journey. So I just hope that reassures some of you guys that even though this feels bleak and this feels scary, we can still work through this. And it's still very, very, very possible for us to keep ourselves mentally grounded, keep ourselves in a neutral place, and address things as they come. So yeah, that's my update with SHEA. If you want to connect with her to work through some of your own like grief, trauma, childhood trauma, definitely send her a message. All of her info is always in the description box. I know a few of you have reached out to her, which makes my heart so full. And it's a resource for you guys. So no pressure. It's not sponsored, but if you want to reach out to her to do some really inner deep healing, it's always in the description. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening or watching today's episode of the And Also podcast. I really appreciate you being here and giving space for these stories to be shared. If you're listening on audio platforms such as Spotify or Apple, be sure to download the episode, send it to a friend, and give the show a 5-star review. That really helps us reach an audience of people who need to hear this sort of thing. So, if you're a fellow griever, send it to your fellow griever, and we can watch the ripple effect happen. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and of course, as always, I will see you guys in next week's episode. And next week, we'll be joined by Brittany Demarco-Furman for another funeral episode. And you guys are not going to want to miss this one because we literally plan our own funerals. All right, you guys, see you next time. Bye.